tacomalanguage.com. If you're interested in taking private lessons with me, the host of the Listen, Read, Interact podcast, you can do that at tacomalanguage.com. You sign up with a simple one-page application just to make sure we're a good fit for each other, and then you'll be able to sign up for private live lessons via Zoom. I also have live online classes available this summer. tacomalanguage.com. There's the Spanish Language Accelerator, the Spanish Story Lab for true beginners, and the Spanish Chat Club for learners that are a little bit more advanced and want just some speaking. So, tacomalanguage.com, tacomalanguage.com. Hola, y bienvenidos a otro episodio de Listen, Read, Interact. Este es el episodio número 90. This is episode number 90 of the Listen, Read, Interact podcast. My name is Andrew Snyder, and I'm the host. I'm a Spanish language professor, and my goal with this podcast has been to really provide materials for learners. A lot of times learners will come up to me and ask, what can I do outside of class? Is there something else I can do? And the answer is yes. The way you acquire any language is to simply listen to it, read it, and then interact with the language that you hear and that you read. Basically, you want to process messages in the language. And the more your brain processes messages using the language, your brain will then take those messages and incorporate them into a mental model of the language. It says, hey, those sounds in this order meant this thing. Or those words, those letters, and that arrangement meant that thing. So the way you build that mental model up to make it look like a native speaker's is to listen, read, and interact. Over and over and over again, on repeat. And that can take many forms. It can be reading a book, or it can be listening to a podcast, or listening to music, or watching TV, or having a conversation. There's a number of ways that this can take place. But the idea is the same. Whichever form you choose, you need to listen to Spanish, or whatever language you're learning, read that language, and then interact with it in some way. And that interaction piece is also important because it lets your brain test hypotheses about the language at like this subconscious level. So your brain says, oh, the language works this way. And it tries to communicate something. And maybe it succeeds and maybe it doesn't. And that feedback will help your brain determine when it should modify that model. So, I tried to say this thing. I tried to communicate this idea. I used those sounds. It didn't work. What can I do to communicate what I want to communicate? How can I modify that system? And so it's like this positive feedback loop where you get more input. The brain, you're using that language that you have, that model that you have, and your brain then modifies that model as you get more input and as you interact with people. And maybe you get what you want, maybe you don't get what you want. So there's lots of good stuff going on there. Okay, this show is broken down into 3 parts. There's the beginning part, which is some pre-reading, and on the show, you're going to hear some example sentences. If you go to the show notes page, listenreadinteract.com/90, since this is episode number 90, you will see a bunch of activities that go along with those example sentences. You'll also see those example sentences. You'll also be able to click on them and see translations of those example sentences. And so that's the pre-reading and interaction phase. The second phase is the brief reading and interaction phase. And this one is a short reading that is based on a longer reading, which we'll get to in a moment. And there's a number of ways to interact with this as well. Now on the show, you'll hear that story read aloud. So you'll hear that brief reading. And if you want to read along on the show notes page, that's totally fine and maybe encouraged. Your comprehension tends to go up as you read and listen at the same time. There's other ways to interact with that. There's a true or false quiz. There's a little cause and effect thing. There's an ordering activity. And finally, there is the complete reading and interaction. And that complete reading and interaction is the full reading, a longer, more complete version of what you saw in phase 2. So that's what the show looks like. And my suggestion to you would be to maybe do part 1 today, maybe part 1 and part 2, depending on your level, and save part 3 for another day. Maybe you do part 1 today, do part 2 tomorrow, and part 3 another day. It makes more sense to have your language acquisition be split up as part of a process, as part of a routine that you can do every day. And so if you can go through today and do all 3 parts today, that's wonderful. But if that's something that you're not going to be able to stick with, my suggestion would be to break it up into smaller chunks and just mark off on the calendar every day that you've done a little bit of listening, a little bit of reading, and a little bit of interaction. Okay, with that, vamos a empezar. Ejemplos. Número 1. Sofía es la mayor. Sofía es la mayor. Sofía es la mayor. 2. Emilia es la menor. Emilia es la menor. Emilia es la menor. 3. Lía es tan alta como Sofía. Lía es tan alta como Sofía. Lía es tan alta como Sofía. 4. Emilia es más baja que sus hermanas. Emilia es más baja que sus hermanas. Emilia es más baja que sus hermanas. 5. Lía es menos inteligente que Sofía. Pobrecita. Lía es menos inteligente que Sofía. Lía es menos inteligente que Sofía. 6. Sofía no quiere cocinar porque es perezosa. Sofía no quiere cocinar porque es perezosa. Sofía no quiere cocinar porque es perezosa. 7. Emilia piensa que el olmalacatl es bistec. Emilia piensa que el olmalacatl es bistec. Emilia piensa que el olmalacatl es bistec. 8. El bistec sabe a llanta. El bistec sabe a llanta. El bistec sabe a llanta. Lectura breve. Me llamo Emilia. Tengo 2 hermanas. Vivimos en la Ciudad de México. Sofía es la mayor. Es alta, inteligente y bonita. Lía es la hermana del medio. Es tan alta y bonita como Sofía. Es inteligente, pero menos inteligente que Sofía. Yo soy la menor. Soy bonita, pero soy más baja que ellas. No soy muy inteligente, pero soy muy trabajadora. Trabajo más que Lía. Trabajo mucho más que Sofía. Un día tengo mucha hambre. Mis hermanas también tienen hambre. Sofía no quiere cocinar porque es perezosa. Decidimos ir a un restaurante. Yo quiero comer un bistec. Lía quiere comer sushi y Sofía quiere comer pastel. Vamos a un restaurante que se llama el náhuatl. Sofía pide pastel, lo prueba y dice que está muy rico. Lía pide sushi, lo prueba y dice que está muy sabroso. Ellas están satisfechas. Yo leo el menú. Veo un plato raro. Se llama olmalacatl. Pienso que es bistec, así que lo pido. El mesero me lo trae. Lo pruebo. ¡Guácala! ¡Sabe muy feo!, digo yo. ¿A qué sabe?, pregunta Sofía. Sabe a llanta, digo. El mesero escucha y dice: Señorita, el olmalacatl es una llanta. Bueno, just a brief pause, a brief intermission, and we'll read the complete version of that story. Listen, Read, Interact is a value for value podcast, which means that I don't take any advertising money and I rely entirely on your donations to keep this thing going. So if you like it, you're enjoying the show, you've been getting value out of the stories and the interactive activities on the show notes pages, listenreadinteract.com/90, by the way, for today's show notes page, then all I ask in return is that if you found value, that you provide value back and you give it back in the amount that you feel like you've received. So if you feel like you've received $100 worth of value from the show, $100 is what you should donate. If you feel like you've received $5 from the show, $5 is what you should donate. So whatever value you think you've received is the value you should provide back. And you can do that at listenreadinteract.com/donate. There's a link also in the episode description in your podcast player. listenreadinteract.com/donate. There's a PayPal donation. There's a Stripe donation. Good stuff, eh? I appreciate everyone who donates, and especially those lower donations. For donations $50 and above, I'll read your name, amount, location, and a brief note if you have one for me. And anything under 50, I'll just keep you anonymous for reasons of anonymity. And that's great. I appreciate all those people who donate those $4 weekly donations. That's very helpful, especially when times are slow. So, hey, listenreadinteract.com/donate. Muchas gracias. Lectura completa. Hay 3 hermanas que viven en la Ciudad de México, la capital de la República Mexicana. Sofía, la mayor de las 3, es alta, inteligente y bonita. Lía, la hermana del medio, es tan alta y bonita como Sofía. Sin embargo, aunque es inteligente, es menos inteligente que Sofía. Emilia es la menor de la familia. Ella es tan bonita como sus hermanas. También es más baja que ellas. Lamentablemente, Emilia es tonta. Es la persona más tonta de su familia. Aunque es tonta, es muy trabajadora. Es más trabajadora que Lía. Es mucho más trabajadora que Sofía, quien es muy perezosa. Tengo hambre, dice Emilia un día. Ay, yo también, dice Lía. No quiero cocinar nada, dice Sofía, quien es muy perezosa. ¿Por qué no vamos a cenar a un restaurante? Me apetece un bistec, dice Emilia. A mí no, dice Lía. Yo quiero comer sushi. Me encanta el sushi. Pues yo solo quiero comer pastel. Solo con pensarlo me está entrando un hambre. Así que las 3 hermanas van a un restaurante. El nombre del restaurante es el náhuatl. En el restaurante, Sofía pide el pastel. El mesero se lo da y ella lo prueba. ¡Qué rico!, dice Sofía. Me encanta el pastel. Entonces Lía pide el sushi. El mesero se lo da. Ella lo prueba y dice: ¡qué sabroso! Me encanta el sushi. Las 2 mayores dejan una propina grande porque están satisfechas con su comida. Pero cuando Emilia lee el menú, ve un plato raro. El nombre del plato es omalacatl. Emilia piensa que es bistec, así que lo pide. El mesero le trae el omalacatl. Y Emilia lo prueba. ¡Guácala!, dice Emilia. Este bistec sabe bien feo. ¿A qué sabe?, pregunta Sofía. Sabe a llanta, dice Emilia. Señorita, dice el mesero, quien escucha la queja de Emilia. El omalacatl es llanta, y es la llanta más fina de México. Bueno. Very good. If you made it this far, muy bien. Hey, this episode, I hope you really enjoyed it. And it was a story that I co-created with some students, and this is my interpretation of the story. And I really liked the use of the náhuatl language, which was a really bad translation that I came up with. Omalacatl is not a real náhuatl word, but it's kind of a combination of 2 words, which you probably noticed in the show notes page there in the something like rubber spinning thing is what it would come up with in the náhuatl language, which is a language that they speak in Mexico. Even to this day, there's lots of people that still speak náhuatl. But you didn't know that. Or maybe you did. Maybe you're smart. You knew that already. Bueno, está bien. Hey, thank you so much for listening. There's a new episode every Saturday. If you enjoyed this show, and you'd like to hear more of them, please consider sending a donation. listenreadinteract.com/donate. Don't forget the show notes page as well. That's more value for you, just built right in. listenreadinteract.com/donate. Muchas gracias y hasta la próxima.